Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so wonderful to be here with all of you. And I'm joined by an incredible guest, Sneha, who I will be introducing in more detail in a moment. But first, I want to welcome you all and share a bit of context about what we're going to do today. My name is Mallory. I am a co founder of the Inheritance Project, and you might be here because you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur and you're struggling to find the right talent for your organization to help you grow and scale. Or maybe you are a HR leader or a head of a department at a larger, more established company and you're looking for new innovative ways to find the right people for your teams. Or maybe you're just curious about the future of the workforce, the future of talent, and excited to get some insights on all of those topics. So, if any of those resonate for you, I'd love for you to write a yes in the comments. And if there's another reason why you're here, we'd be really curious to know who you are, where you're streaming in from, and what is one of the biggest challenges you're facing around talent right now. So that could be finding the right people, keeping the right people, managing the right people in the right way. So whatever your biggest talent challenge is, ooh, that's a bit of a tongue twister. Whatever your biggest talent challenge is, write it in the comments and hopefully we'll get a chance to address a lot of those and talk more about it during the course of this conversation. And at Inheritance Project, we work with leadership teams and organizations to create really thriving and inclusive cultures as organizations grow and scale, and also support existing legacy organizations to transform their culture. And we do it through the lens of inheritance. And I want to explain what we mean by that because sometimes people hear that term and they immediately think of tax planning or wealth management. But actually, when we use the term inheritance, we're actually talking about all the things that we've inherited that shape us and make us who we are as leaders, as collaborators. So that's our culture, our values, our beliefs, the ways that we were taught to see the world, our early experiences that shaped us and taught us how to communicate and work with others. So this is what we mean when we say inheritance. And all of our programs invite leaders and teams into a process of investigating and unpacking your inheritance and reflecting on the gifts that are there and also some of the challenges that may need to be transformed or shifted in order to take you as a leader and your organization to where you want to go in the future. So that's a bit about me and Inheritance Project. And I'm really excited to introduce Sneha, who is one of the co-founders of Geeks and Experts, which is an incredible fractional talent platform. And we'll talk more about what fractional talent means in a second for some of you who aren't familiar with that term. But she is revolutionizing the way small and medium businesses connect with and find the right talent to help them grow and thrive. She has had an incredibly varied and diverse career, working with social impact startups in Spain to food tech unicorns in India. She's worked all over the world. And on top of her incredible entrepreneurial experience, she's also a sommelier and a writer for Medium. So I'm so excited to introduce the multi-talented Sneha. Is there anything else that you want to share about yourself before we get started?
No, I think that was great. Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Mallory. I'm so excited to be here with the Inheritance Project. Thank you for setting up this live. I love the ethos and the brand values that Inheritance Project stands by. I think more and more today, people want to embrace their culture, their identity beyond just their 9 to 5 job. And I think that resonates with people like you and me who have many passions outside of work as well, which somewhere contribute into who you are as a person. So appreciate what you're doing and excited to be here.
Thank you. Well, let's start with talking a bit about your inheritance. One of the things that we love to do is inviting all of our guests to bring and share an object that is important to their inheritance, their background, their culture, their upbringing in some way, and to tell us the story behind it. So I'd love to start there.
Absolutely. And this is exciting for me. I actually have here, and I can just peek at it here and show you, but I have handwritten recipes from my mom, which is something that she gave to me as a farewell gift when I was leaving home. And I've been away from home since I was 16. And you can imagine, Indian family food has been such a big part of our culture, from festivals to celebrations to occasions to, celebrating anything, life, death. It's always been central. So when I came home, literally back in India, and I told my mom that I need something that would make me feel close to home and give me that comfort when I'm miles away. And I kid you not, I mean, literally throughout COVID, this was my Bible, so to say. It was something that I would keep going back to feel that comfort. So that's something that I inherited from my mom, and she's inherited from her mom. So there are a lot of secret recipes in here, which if we connect post this, I'm happy to share them. But basically, that's kind of something that's very close to me and has shaped me into the person I am today.
That's such a generous offer. I may definitely take you up on some of those secret recipes. And what a special gift. I feel actually we have a event that we do, a team building event called Deep Dining, where different team members are invited to share a recipe that's been meaningful to them from their inheritance and upbringing.
I
And it's
love
actually
that.
so incredibly powerful how much culture and stories and values are passed down through food and the way we interact with food. So I think that's such a beautiful inheritance object to share.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
connecting this back to your leadership journey, what's something that you inherited, maybe a value, a belief, something from your culture or your family, a way of seeing the world that has really supported you as a leader or shaped you on your leadership and entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think about this often because being an entrepreneur is hard. Very often you have to, pick yourself up. The highs are great, but the lows can really feel low, especially when you're, so far away from home. Your support system is very different here. So I keep going back to the beliefs that, were inherited in my mind about it's never too late to start or to change something. And I
Mm,
think more often than not, the older we get kind of rooted in our ways, in the way things are done, or our beliefs, but that's kind of holding you back in many ways. So I think just realizing that it's never too late to either start something or put a pause on something that's not serving you any longer. And I've seen this in my own family with, an aunt who started her business when she was in her 40, another relative who's, looking at YouTube channels close to retirement, starting content there. So I think there's a lot to gain from understanding that time essentially is not really going to hold you unless you think of it that way. So
mm,
that's something that I strongly believe. And even as an entrepreneur, when you're working on a project, if you think that something is not serving you or a way to do that thing is not serving you, you have to be able to eliminate it. You have to be able to
mm,
iterate it. So I think just reminding myself about that has turned me into a better
mm.
leader, into a better team player, because I am quick with adapting or changing or pivoting as we, founders are so used to doing in our work. And I think that
Mm.
is something that is very important to keep in mind.
Mm. So cool that you have that example from your aunt and other family members. Because I actually think that this is one of the things that a lot of the leaders that we work with actually really struggle with is being able to move with change. And as we look around the world and how much change has happened in the last 3 years, especially, it's an increasingly important and needed skill. And so it's really, really powerful that that's a part of your inheritance that you're embracing. And I want to ask you the flip side of that question, which is when was a moment in time when you realized that an inherited way of working or behaving or seeing the world or an inherited belief was actually getting in the way of you being successful as a entrepreneur or leader, and how did you transform that?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And before we go to that question, I'd love to even plug in a book recommendation called
Mhm.
Who Moved My Cheese, which is essentially what we're talking about, adaptability and just being open to receiving change, accepting change, and noticing change actually around you. So maybe you can leave that in the comments after this. In terms of the belief that was limiting, yeah, there's definitely a lot of self work that I've done in the last, few years of plunging into entrepreneurship because it's been a vessel of like growth, discovery, understanding what are my weaknesses. And I think one belief that, maybe it was coming from just how the education system is back home in India. I had a very strong belief that I need to study the syllabus, appear for an exam, ace the exam, and the grades will add up and things will go in that direction. Reality is life does not work that way. There's no syllabus. Everything can go completely opposed to your plans, no matter how hard you try to like get
Mm.
every detail and keep every metric in count. At the end of the day, I say that 1 plus 1 is not two in entrepreneurship, especially. And we know that from things that have happened in the past few years, like you said, COVID, and then just in general the challenges that keep coming up. I think that was one thing that was holding me back, was just thinking about, oh, I've prepared for this, and I've studied the syllabus, I know exactly what I need to do. And reality is there's no manual, there's no exam that you can appear for, there's no right or wrong answer. And reminding yourself that you're not answerable to anybody but yourself. So that external validation of maybe I'll get an A in this exam, or maybe if I do this for my startup, it will excel. I mean, those are not helping anybody. It's just making things harder for you, because you know your business the best. You know your target audience the best. You know their challenges the best. So other things I consider as background noise, or just shiny object syndrome, which very often we tend to like get carried away with. But staying true to that and knowing that I am answerable to how I want to conduct my business and the goals that I want to achieve, I think has
Mm.
been a game changer for me. So,
Mm.
not holding on to any external validation, whether that's fundraising, whether that's media announcements. I mean, think of it in many different ways, but it's not an exam. So don't
Mm.
prepare for it like you need to appear in your best version and get full marks every day.
Mm. Thanks for that reminder. It definitely resonated with me. And I'm curious if anyone's streaming in and you also feel like the way you were taught to work by the formal education system is actually not in service of, or you had to learn how to evolve that and transform that inheritance in your journey as a leader or as an entrepreneur. I'd be really curious if anyone else has also had that same experience. You can write me too in the comments. And we're going to actually transition to talk more about your work and especially the future that you see, the way the world is going, the way the world of work is going in terms of hiring, finding, and retaining and managing the best talent. And for those of you who have joined a little later, we'd also love to see in the comments if you're facing a particular challenge in your organization when it comes to talent, whether it's finding the right people, retaining them, making sure you're managing people in the most effective way. I would love and we would love to hear your biggest talent challenges in the comments, and we'll try and make sure that we address some of those in our conversation. But first, Sneha, I'd love to hear your perspective. Obviously, the world of work has changed a lot, especially in the last few years, as so much remote work has opened up since the COVID pandemic. And even before then, there was a huge trend towards more people working as contractors in the gig economy, less full time employees, people moving jobs and companies a lot more frequently than they did a few decades ago. I'm curious what you're seeing now as some of the trends that are shaping the world of work and talent going into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. We're calling it the future of work, but I think the future of work is already now. It's happening as we speak. So for me, that transition of understanding how small and medium businesses, early stage startups, how they're adopting new work or hiring cultures and building their teams in a way more strategic and sustainable way is what I have seen through my time with Geeks and Experts. And the reason I say this, of course, my background has been, very nonlinear, like you highlighted. I've been in social impact consulting, I've been in food tech and ed tech, but it's always been with early stage companies. And I think the model that used to exist with, going on a hiring or a fundraising spree and then growing your team, at the highest speed possible, and then realizing, do I really need all this talent? What is everyone aligned, value wise? Is this sustainable? Are everyone's goals met? I think people are realizing now that that wasn't necessarily the ideal approach, especially when you're in that small and medium stage, and you're still identifying product market fit. Maybe you're still identifying how much you want to scale and where you want to scale your business. So what I'm seeing as a trend is definitely a slower fashion, sustainable fashion version, if you can call that, of the gig economy, emerging. And an interesting anecdote from this is when I started doing a lot of customer discovery interviews with the talent that we have on board, I realized that that was exactly what they were looking for as well. So, the quick fashion, the fast fashion version of the gig economy of getting a logo for $50 in a day, that is definitely evolving. There's a productized service of individual experts, independent contractors that is emerging. And that is whom we are calling the fractional talent. And by fractional talent, I mean, yes, you can consider it a freelancer or a contractor, but it is a little more nuanced than that. It is someone who is integrated into your company. It is somebody who is emerged into your system, into your process, and they are aligned with the goals that you have. And they could be working as a fractional, PR executive for 3 or 4 companies, but they're integrated into those companies with the long-term goals in mind, with their expectations and goals aligned. And some of the things that I noticed when I started ideating on this, and what led me to actually, build in this direction, was realizing that a lot of the experts and the independent consultants were also looking for companies that appreciated what they brought to the table. So not somebody who's looking for, a quick, low bid kind of project to be done, but somebody who would appreciate them to be integrated into their team for a long term. And that is why we have the model of a sustainable, subscription. So whether it's 1 month, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, those are the different product offerings that we have. So when any small and medium business wants to hire, they have to have that vision in mind, that to see any kind of results, you need to allow some time for the fractional talent to be immersed into your organization. So I'm not sure if you want to jump in a little bit specifically on some of those trends, but that's basically what we're seeing from both sides, the supply and the demand of fractional talent.
Thank you for explaining that differentiation between freelancer or contractor who you might hire just to do a one-off project. They're not really part of your team. They produce the deliverable and then they're gone, versus fractional talent, which may not work for you full-time. They may have many different clients that they're embedded with, but they are a part of your team and working towards the goals and part of your culture. And I think that begs the next question, which is, if you are building a team that is comprised of a lot of fractional talent, how do you maintain that sense of cohesion or a great workplace culture, especially when people are working virtually and maybe not even on the same hours? I know this is something that my team deals with, so I'd love to hear your advice for folks who are in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting to see some of the trends that are emerging in fractional talent, or the slower, sustainable, version of the gig economy that I'm talking about. And one of them is definitely the way people are hired. And more or less, people are hired through word of mouth, through referrals. And we're seeing that even in our current projects, that at the early stages, when the concept of fractional talent is new to you, the goal or the business objectives of going for fractional talent have to be really laid out. They have to be very clear in your organization, within your team, about why am I hiring fractional talent? What are they going to bring to the table? Because if you had to go and hire full time, of course, you would be spending probably, I think the figure is maybe $4,000 just in the hiring process. And if you're looking at fractional talent, you want to spend more time just identifying those goals, because there's a statistic on maximum number of reasons the projects fall through is because of misalignment of goals. And I think today, startups, including small and medium businesses, everyone's very focused on what values do they stand for. Is it sustainability? Is it ESG? Is it DEI? And I think on the demand side as well, we're seeing the hiring managers very focused on supplier diversity. So again, there we're seeing trends where people are picking up these values or these metrics that stand by their brand, and that is what they're implementing in the hiring process. So I think if you're going out to hire that talent, you have to make sure that it is sustainable, that you have a very clear mention of what your goals are or what your values are as an organization, so that whoever you're hiring meets those values. And the third thing that we're trying to do actually with Geeks and Experts is systemizing that peer referencing, so that we can actually work on word of mouth. Because I know that if Mallory hired a fractional executive, I would trust who she has hired, and I would want to hire somebody that she's worked with. And that is something that we want to hone in on, because especially when it comes to a lot of underrepresented talent or talent that comes from diverse backgrounds, it's a challenge for them to get that visibility or for them to onboard projects. And that is something we want to change in the industry. We want to focus on that diversity. We want to focus on building those sustainable relationships between two companies. So it's not necessarily like a one-way street. It's more like a two-way communication, which I think really strengthens the work that they bring to the table.
Yeah, I think this is actually really connected to a comment in the chat from Lizzie. Hi, Lizzie. So great to see you here. Which is, how do you make sure that you're actually matching the specific need of your business with the innate genius of the talent? So, not just like we were talking about, picking some random person off Upwork to do a small project for you, but how do you actually find that person who's that hell yes kind of fit, and make sure that they are matched with the need of your business in the right way? How can businesses do a better job at this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's definitely something that you want to always happen, that when you find that great fit, you know that this person is going to be a game changer when you add them to your team. And I think one of the sure shot ways to do that is to make sure that you are doing a thorough onboarding, because it's easy to identify who's the person and then just hand over the task to them and make it very task based. Whereas if you make this process based, if you actually delve into what is their process for conducting a project, not necessarily looking at what is the outcome. So if it was, maybe you want to get somebody to do extensive press release and media pitching for you, run through what are their processes for doing that, instead of looking at the traditional way of looking at a portfolio and seeing this is what their deliverables have been in the past. Focus on the process, focus on how did they think through some of these challenges or some of these projects, because I think that really gives you insight into how somebody works, what are maybe some of the challenges that could come up when you're working with them, or what are some of the things that you could learn from them. I'm a strong believer in finding ways that you can learn something from anybody in your work, outside of work. And I think if you can respect and admire someone's processes, learn something from them, that is definitely a hell yes, on the hiring side, because they're going to add something to the table.
Yeah, it actually, something that we do at Inheritance Project, obviously connected to our philosophy, is actually really get to know the context and the backstory of that person. So not just their professional skills and talents that they bring to the table, maybe outside the specific scope or project, which is great and can help you identify other ways where that person can add value, but also getting to know them as a human, understanding where they came from, what shaped them, what their values are, what they get excited about outside work too. And I know that sounds like, oh, that's just nice small talk, but in my experience, those conversations have actually led to us uncovering some of the greatest opportunities for how that person can contribute to our team outside of what I would have imagined. And the other thing that we often do is do those kinds of human-centered culture building, get to know you exercises at our regular all hands meetings, even with people who've been on the team for a while, because every time we meet, it's an opportunity to understand that person more and understand what they get lit up about and how we can continue to give them opportunities that can serve them and can also serve our business. So I totally agree with what you said and wanted to add that addition too. And I know you mentioned onboarding, and that I think is an area where a lot of companies struggle, especially startups or small businesses who may be hiring a lot of people in a short amount of time.
Mhm.
What advice do you have or tips do you have a really good onboarding process and experience, especially for people who might not be full-time employees of your team beyond what we've already talked about?
Yeah, that's a great point that you brought up. In terms of onboarding, I think onboarding is basically the key to retaining. So if your onboarding is smooth, if you're taking control of the communication that goes on there, if you're absolutely transparent about expectations, I think that is a big one because very often when you're onboarding talent, you're only thinking about what is the work that they're going to put in, what are the hours that they're going to put in. But I think the trend that is emerging now is to focus on the value add, on the processes that they put into work. So not necessarily billable hours, but actually focusing on what is it that they bring to the table as a whole. And to your point, I believe that we're all in the age of multi-passionate, or if you want to call them multi-hyphenate, I like to call it multi-passionate careers, because there's so much that we're doing that is not just fitted to that 9 to 5. And I think when you're onboarding talent, realizing what are their strengths, what are attitudes or attributes that they bring outside of work, and how you can make them feel whole when they're as a part of your that virtual team or fractional team. Because especially as fractional talent, you are working with different companies, your attention is divided in different ways, so context switching can get a bit tricky sometimes.
Mm,
So when you're onboarding, I think the essential part to do here is to keep communication lines clear, to understand that expectations are aligned, and in terms of keeping it sustainable. So not and I think that maybe ties in also to culture, because I think creating culture is one thing, but evolving culture or allowing people to kind of evolve into that culture is something that takes a little more time. It takes a little bit more patience, and it takes work from both sides. It's not just about being an employer and handing over the manual, or the kind of tasks that need to be delivered, but actually onboarding the team in a way that they connect with the other team members, whether that would be having meetups, or having those Friday check-ins, but making sure that they feel a part of the team, working with the full-time employees as well.
mm. Yeah, that's so important and something that can often get missed when people are contractor or fractional and not full time, is having that space of connectivity for everyone to connect. And we have a lot of fractional talent on our team, and we have a monthly all hands where everyone comes. And like I said, we do some team building, inheritance conversations, as well as, sharing important updates about what's going on. And I think that makes a huge difference to people feeling connected and part of a culture, even if they're not working for you 100% of the time. And I actually, there's another question or comment from Amaya. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. You can feel free to correct me in the comments, which is, how do you manage people in an effective manner? Which is a very big question, and the topic of actually a lot of our leadership trainings, and especially we especially focus on inclusive leadership. So, how do you
Mhm.
manage diverse teams? And that could be diverse culturally, but also diverse, in terms of a mix of contractors and full
Mhm.
time, a mix of long tenured employees and new people. There's so many
Yeah.
ways that differences of perspective or work styles show up in the workplace. And also managing conflicts or issues that come up, or having hard conversations. So we do whole training programs on that topic, which I'm going to share a little bit about later. I'd also love to know, Amaya, if you have a particular issue or situation that's been coming up, that's more specific that you want us to dig into. But for now, I'm going to pass it to you, Sneha, and especially for people working with fractional talent or
Mhm.
contractors, how do you, after the onboarding process, make sure that you're managing them effectively and getting the best outcomes from that working relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Amia. It's super interesting to see. In terms of managing, actually, the counterintuitive answer that I have is ownership. So very often with fractional talent, I think the challenge comes in making them feel like they own or they're accountable. Even though they're fractional, they have an ownership or they have a stake in what you're doing. And the minute you can translate that ownership to them, whether that is through highlighting their deliverables or highlighting their processes or understanding the way they work, what are their requirements, that will make them feel more involved, and that will make them treat the project as their own, as opposed to going back to the contractor and the freelance, as opposed to making them feel like this is just a project that they need to package and return back to the company. I think making sure that there is ownership in that is a very important and crucial factor in making sure that they are as involved. They kind of have the same skin in the game, basically. And that's again going back to when we started with Geeks and Experts. An onboarding part of it is very big, but also making sure that both sides, not just the employer, but also the employee who's coming on board, have that ownership. They have equal excitement about the project, because at the end of the day, these are people you're spending long hours of the day with. So you want to make sure that their energy matches you. And the only way you can do that is to work with people who inspire you, who you respect, who you admire. And I think giving them that ownership allows them to shine in their own light. And I think it goes to even to the extent that if there are mess ups, they are going to be accountable for it. But it's very easy to kind of let go of a mistake or brush it under the rug if they were never even held accountable or they were never given ownership of it to begin with. And I think Mallory, you might have a little bit more to add to this in terms of leaders, how they can also train to delegate. I know when I started out initially, it was hard for me to understand what to delegate. It felt like you want to take control of everything, you want to have the end to end in your control. But I think that was actually working counterintuitively and like ineffectively in terms of management. The sooner I realized, giving ownership or accountability to my co-founder and to the teams that we have on board was when I started to actually realize that this is in my control and this is what I can do, but this is in their control and they are accountable for it. So I think just defining that is important.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I definitely have worked with a lot of leaders who struggle with this. And I think that it comes from often our inheritance. So we may have come from environments where making a mistake was very costly in whatever way, shape, or form in our childhood or early adult lives. Or maybe we worked in a really intense competitive environment before, where if some small detail went wrong, it could cost you a promotion or your livelihood. And I noticed that, when we're talking about work, we're talking about our survival, our ability to earn money, to put food on the table for ourselves and our families. So that can bring up a lot of intense emotion for people. It can put our nervous system into a survival state, where we feel highly activated. Our heart is beating. Our breath speeds up when we're in this kind of state. And I noticed that these kind of patterns, they live in our bodies, not just in our minds, because a lot of people will think consciously, oh yeah, of course, delegating makes so much sense. I don't have time to do anything. But when it comes down to it, those survival patterns kick in, and they want to make sure every single detail is perfect, because on a subconscious level, it's connected to our ability to survive. And so that's part of the work that we do with leaders and teams, is becoming more aware of what are those subconscious inherited beliefs or ways of behaving that are maybe really helped you in your career earlier on, but now with where you are as a leader or where you want your organization to go are no longer serving you and need to be transformed. And the thing is, they need to be transformed not just at the level of the mind and consciously, but also through working with our nervous system and our body to let go of some of those reactions. And it's definitely really common. I've definitely had to work on it myself, becoming an entrepreneur in my own way too. And I think this is a perfect moment, because we've mentioned your work at Geeks and Experts a lot. And I want you to explain to everyone here what exactly you do and also the story behind it. What inspired you to start this company, and how do you see it contributing to the future of the way that we work?
Yeah, I'd love to share that. And thank you so much for highlighting even about, our challenges as leaders to kind of let go. And I think one important aspect there is about taking charge of how you talk to yourself and your ego, which I think when that comes into the equation, things change a lot. The fear of failure is mostly, attached to ego, and we let it stick around for so long. It's easy when something doesn't work out to let it sit around, but as a leader, the idea is to embrace that and to move on and not get attached to it. So thank you for highlighting that and doing such meaningful work with leaders in businesses. In terms of geeks and experts, yeah, the journey actually has been very nonlinear, as you can imagine. But having worked with a lot of small and medium businesses and seen that at the early stages, your needs as a company are so volatile. Freelancer might not be able to fulfill it, but you don't have budgets to hire full time. So you want somebody who can work on a project on a sustainable basis. And for me, it specifically stood out for particular roles because I have a marketing and PR background. And for me, I realized that that was one of the domains in which there's a lot of mystique around, public relations. How do you build your company's brand? How do you tell your story? How do you navigate, pitching to journalists or media outlets? And that is not something that can easily be tied in by a freelancer or a contractor, because it has to be somebody who understands your company, who understands the backstory. So it's not necessarily something that can be delivered in a week's timeline. And that's the reason why when we started Geeks and Experts, our goal was to work with vetted talent we've got all this talent through word of mouth. So we've not spent any money on advertising. It's only been, getting them on board organically, in a fashion that is, kind of systematic in a way that connects to their referrals and their networks. So creating that network effect, I think, has been a very key, way in which we have grown Geeks and Experts. Because the talent that we have is all very aligned in terms of the kind of projects that they want to take on. And going back to your question about how we work with these companies and why I started this was to see that impact and that sustainable way of working with small and medium businesses, because your budgets are definitely low at that early stage. But at the same time, you want to be able to see results. So you have to decide, do you want to put in some money on effective talent that will get you the results, not immediately, but maybe in 3 months, in 6 months, and stay true to your goals and alignment? Or would you rather, spend just quick money right now and come back to that problem later on, when probably you need to spend more to kind of damage control or to go back and redo a lot of the work that was done earlier? So just reimagining the way in which the future of work is, and going back to what you said about, today we all have multi-income streams. We're working in multiple projects. We have multiple skill sets that we bring to the table. So being mindful of how people are hiring the fractional talent moving forward, and with the focus on diversity, because I think that is something just personally resonates with me, my co-founder, and we've seen projects fall through because there's not been an alignment. So making sure that a lot of those metrics are focused on right from day one.
Thank you so much. And what is the one thing that you're most excited about in your work with Geeks and Experts right now?
I'm super excited actually about just meeting amazing entrepreneurs, who have been doing meaningful work for years, for decades, and now are, in that stage when they're ready to see some growth. They're ready to kind of kick off steam by hiring some talent to do some of that scale up and growth work for them. So I've met entrepreneurs who are from brick and mortar companies or like brands in New York, but I've also met with entrepreneurs who are all the way in the West Coast, and they're working with a lot of amazing brands and consumer startups. So that's kind of been the most exciting journey, is just meeting. I love meeting people. I love the energy that I get from meeting people from diverse backgrounds and diverse careers is something that I really, really energizes me. And so for me, that has been the most exciting thing, is just seeing those projects come to life. And at the same time, we have some exciting projects in the works as well, with a lot of New York-based startups. So I'm excited for those to unfold in the next few months. Towards as we approach, I guess, the end of the year and everyone goes into holiday season. So the next 2 months is going to be full power energy, I think.
Awesome. How exciting. And if that sounds like you. Anyone who's listening, definitely get in touch with Sneha and see, initiate the conversation to get added to the Geeks and Experts community of talented humans who are ready to share their expertise with many different clients and different organizations. And I will have to give a shout out to Richard from Sally, who actually organized the founders event in New York where we met. And so it's also been really wonderful to connect with you and other people who are starting organizations that align with our values when it comes to diversity and creating more flexibility and innovating the way that we do work so that it really serves the organizations that we work for and also the individual humans who are working too. And for many of us, the rigidity of a 9 to 5 job doesn't really work for our lifestyles, whether it's because of that's not how our energy flows, or we have kids to take care of, or family members to care for. I'm really excited by the fact that more and more people are stepping into creating the type of work and the type of lifestyle that really um, serves them best, and it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. And I'm excited that we live in an era where we have more and more of that flexibility. And so thank you for all the work that you're doing in this area. And we want to now open it up to any final questions. So if you have any more questions for Sneha or me about talent, the future of the workplace, hiring, managing, building team culture, or anything else about our personal leadership or entrepreneurial journey, please write them in the comments now. We would love to hear from you, and we'd love to share about anything that you're curious to talk about. We're an open book. And while we wait for your questions to come in, I would love to actually share more about our upcoming inclusive leadership and conflict resolution program, which is starting in about 2 weeks. It is for any of you listening who maybe, like some of the people already commented, you're struggling managing people, or you're having conflicts or tensions on your team, or misunderstandings that seem long-standing that you're finding it hard to figure out how to work through them. Or maybe you are an entrepreneur and you're dealing with a disagreement with your co-founder or with an investor about the direction of things, and you're not sure how to resolve it. So any of these scenarios sound familiar to you, then you might be a great candidate to join us for this program, where we'll be teaching real skills for how to have some of the toughest conversations that you might have in business and in life. The funny thing is that even though this was originally designed as a professional training, we've done this course for leaders at a lot of different organizations at this point. And this is the first time we're opening up open enrollment. So rather than working with a full team to do this program, now any individual can join us for it. But what we often hear from past participants is, this program really helped me with my relationship with my boss or with my peer, but it actually saved my marriage. And it's actually amazing because a lot of the skills that you'll learn are relevant to all hard conversations, all difficult conflicts, whether they're at work or at home. And so I will share my screen and share a bit more about this. Let me see if I can get this to work. Here we go. Great. So this program, the first session is actually September 22nd. And it's focused on inclusive leadership and conflict resolution. And as we've been talking about, the world of work is transforming. The rise of AI, the increase in virtual teams. I've noticed that in my work with organizations, a lot of conflict and misunderstanding happens when we work virtually. And we don't have that opportunity to really connect with people in the office, to have a cup of coffee together, to build that human relationship and connection, it's so much easier for misunderstandings to spin out of control in that without that human contact. So whether you're working remotely or dealing with incorporating new technology at work, we are now in an era where the art of human relationships and dealing with those hard conversations, those sticky moments is more important than ever. And it's what's going to make you stand out at your organization, because most professional development is focused on technical skills. And we, as we were talking about our formal education system earlier, our education system does not prepare us to become leaders, to deal with some of the really challenging conversations and situations that come up at work. And so a lot of us are learning these skills by failing, by making mistakes, by experience on the job, and we're struggling with these issues alone. So one of the great benefits of joining us is that you will be practicing these skills of how to have hard conversations, how to resolve conflict in community with other incredible leaders who are committed to a different kind of future in the world of work, one that's more human, more inclusive, more connected. And I also highly recommend this program if you're like me and you previously struggled with conflict avoidance. So really getting nervous or anxious or not wanting to bring something up that feels like it might upset the other person. That often gets in the way of us being able to advocate for ourselves, ask for the things we need to succeed and to thrive, to set the boundaries that we need to do our best work. And so during the course of this 10 weeks, we'll be doing some deep inner reflection on our own patterns of communication and conflict, as well as learning these really practical, applicable skills for how to have challenging conversations. And you will, I know 10 weeks sounds like a big commitment, but it's actually only 4 2-hour workshops on Friday mornings over Zoom. If you can't attend live, you can also watch the replay, although, of course, I recommend joining live because we're going to do interactive activities and dialogue, and it'll be, really valuable to have that experience. But everything is recorded and you'll receive all the resources and exercises. You'll have lifetime access to it through our online portal. And beyond the actual content, if you complete the course, you'll also get a LinkedIn certification in inclusive leadership and conflict resolution. Who doesn't love having an extra certification on their LinkedIn profile? And most importantly, you'll become part of our community of leaders who are all working through these things together and receive personalized one-on-one coaching in some of our group coaching sessions too. So I will share the link to this page in the comments. It has all the information about the course. And one of the things that I'm really excited to share right now, actually, is that we have a limited number of partial scholarships available for BIPOC and identifying folks and or people who work in social impact or nonprofit fields. So if that applies to either of you and you feel like money is a barrier to you joining this program, please reach out to me. Send me a direct message on LinkedIn with your an explanation about who you are, what you do, why you want to take this program, and why it will be so impactful to the work you do in the world. And we will be awarding those scholarships early next week. You'll get the chance to take the program for just $500 instead of the current rate of $1,980. So it is a more than 70% discount on the full price. And we're so excited to offer this because part of our values and our philosophy is to make these tools and this work as accessible as possible to diverse communities. And that's something that is really, really important to us. So that's a little bit about what's coming up from us. I don't see any more questions in the comments. Sneha, is there anything you would like to share about the program or anything else?
No, I think that's incredible, and I think time is short. So you said the applications are due next week. So I think definitely share this with people who you think would be a great fit. I think Inheritance Project is doing amazing work, and I think I strongly believe in if you tough conversations get tougher if you delay them. So I
Mhm.
think that's an important thing. If anyone's focused on leadership, you'd like to share this with your team. And yeah, also feel free to reach out to me. As we mentioned, we're working on a fractional talent marketplace. So if you are looking or you're wanting to get onboarded to our talent, we have a very easy vetting process. It's very straightforward. So happy to chat further about that, and just open to connecting with fellow founders as well. I mean, we're all in this together. I think that's something that I want to just leave a note saying that more than happy to chat with other founders, whether they're thinking about an idea or they're struggling with something, and if I can be a meaningful resource, I'm more than happy to do that. Because I know a lot of people have done that for me, and it's been really, really incredible, and just making this whole journey that much more exciting. So
Mm.
definitely want to open up my LinkedIn connections or DMs for that as well.
Mm. Thank you so much for that generous offer. I really appreciate it. I hope some people here are able to connect with you and have a really meaningful conversation. And I also wanted to share that I forgot to mention that over the course of the 10 weeks working on this program, if you were to join, you'll actually be applying these skills to a real life situation that you're dealing with. So it's not just theoretical, you're actually putting the skills into practice every day and giving really specific prompts and exercises to do that. So the goal is by the end of the 10 weeks to really transform a particular working relationship or difference of opinion that you may be dealing with and really come to a place where you can find common ground. So I'm really, really excited about that. And it's always so powerful to watch how people are able to transform some of those relationships and find solutions and a new way of collaborating with people that they never even thought was possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really excited if you have any questions about the program or want to apply for the scholarship, just definitely send me a message and I would love to connect with you. If you are a leader at an organization and you're curious about some of our programs for onboarding and building culture and building more connection across virtual teams, I'd also love to connect with you. You can send me a direct message and we can set up some time to chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Sneha, for generously
Thank you.
sharing your wisdom and expertise and your perspective and insights about the future of work. It was so valuable talking to you. I'm definitely walking away with a few things that I can do differently on my own team. So thank you for that and for your willingness to share.
I love this. I really appreciate you inviting me here, and thank you so much for those who attended. Um, this has been great. I love this conversation, and I hope that people just find value and work in a way that is meaningful to them.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.